so excited to be here. I love when I get to hang out with you for a little bit.
Me too. It's been way too long. And for everybody who's joined us so far, hi, I'm divorce prep coach Alex Beatty. I help people prepare in advance of a divorce financially, emotionally, otherwise. And I love talking to different divorce professionals and having about 20-minute conversations. So we're sharing information that can help your journey be a lot easier than ours was when we went through
Yes.
it. And today I'm so grateful to be joined by one of my favorite people, divorce coach, certified divorce coach, Leah Marie Mazur. I don't know why I'm stumbling over my word. At Mindfully Ready here on Instagram. I'll tag her, and this conversation will live on my Instagram page immediately after in my blog. So if you want to get a hold of her, connect with her, you'll be able to. I'll make sure that you've got a way to connect with her. But I just kind of want to jump in because, especially with the holidays coming up, I think this conversation is really timely because if you're going through a divorce or if you're on the other side of it and you're a parent, having to continue to co-parent with somebody who might be toxic, right?
Mhm.
High conflict, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the most challenging things that you have to do. And when you're going through an intense time like the holidays and you're trading off kids and emotions are big and you're trying not to fall into the same old patterns that you had before, being able to talk about this now to share some info, hopefully will help some people get through that Thanksgiving dinner a little bit easier.
Yeah, it is. I mean, co-parenting with somebody who's high conflict all year, it's something obviously that's no fun and it's stressful, but especially around the holidays, because the holidays in and of itself can be kind of a stressful time. It could be, financially, it could be stressful for you. If you're a single mom and you've been doing a lot of things on your own and you have the kid, I mean, there's a lot that comes up. But there's definitely a few different things that you can do. I mean, if you're really struggling with somebody who's high conflict, the thing you need to remember is the holidays, it's like go time for them. They love to push your buttons and try to ruin the holiday. So kind of like put that on your bingo card so that there's no surprises. They're going to try those last minute, schedule changes and things, to try to kind of throw a wrench in your plans. So always have kind of a plan A, plan B, and then like maybe a plan C as a backup to help with that, but also just make sure you're only focusing on what you can control.
Yeah.
Right? Like they love chaos, they thrive on chaos. Don't let them bait you into that and get involved in their madness. Just focus on you and your kids and what's going on in your house.
I love that. Yes. Always focus on what's in your control is the name of the game. And that can feel so challenging when you've been locked into like a disconnected and a toxic dynamic with your ex, right? It's been usually a long road. You're set in certain patterns. And even if you have the best of intentions, sometimes, it can get the better of you. And I think one of the most important things is, again, when you're focusing on yourself, it's really
Mhm.
all about the B word, right? Boundaries,
Yes.
which I know you talk about all the time. And that's where I see a lot of people struggle.
Yeah.
And, I want to remind people, boundaries are like going to the gym, right? Like we all are so excited when we do it for 3 weeks straight. And we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then you fall off for 2 weeks and you're like, oh, all is lost. It's not. It's about practicing.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you set boundaries and your ex completely ignores it? Then what? Like, how do you reinforce or enforce those boundaries with somebody who really doesn't seem to give a shit?
Yeah, they don't respect them. Well, the thing you have to remember is a boundary isn't about telling someone else what to do or what not to do. Like you'll never have control over anybody else, what they're saying, what they're doing, how they're parenting, how they're not parenting. So the boundary is if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. Or if you do this, this is how I'm going to respond to that. So you can enforce your boundaries when they're not being respected by doing the thing you said you were going to do, whatever that looks like. But there has to be some kind of consequence. If you speak to me this way, I am no longer going to have conversations with you over the phone. If you show up late, you are not going to have access, to the kids for this 3 hours that you set, because I'm not going to be home. I'm not going to sit around and wait for you to, ruin my plans because you just want to have control over me. There's all kinds of things, but one of the best boundaries is when you're, again, specifically with high conflict. I want to make sure that people know this, because so many people hear us talking like this and then they're like, well, that's not very nice, or this isn't like an amicable co-parenting situation.
Yeah.
This isn't where two people can really like do what's best for the kids and get on the same page. This is like high conflict when you're dealing with somebody who is like a narcissist or a sociopath, or really just doesn't put the kids as the priority.
Mm-hmm.
You want to only be engaging with them when it is absolutely necessary. They're going to try to bait you into things. They're going to make accusations, and they're going to send you really long emails or text messages, or they're going to abuse the co-parenting app. And the thing is, again, we can't control them, right? But we can control how we respond. So make sure when you are engaging with them, it is clear, concise, emotions and opinions are out of it. It's like a business transaction. And you're only engaging when it's like child focused and absolutely necessary. You're not responding to every message. You're not answering every question, because a lot of times what they'll do is any information you give them, they're going to find a way to twist it, turn it, reverse it, and spin it and throw it right back in your face. And you're going to be like, how did we even get here? Like, where did you get that from what I said, right? And then it's like it gets you on that hamster wheel. So you have a boundary with yourself by being really mindful of how often you're engaging and how you're engaging with your ex.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely agree with everything that you're saying. And I think that's the hardest part, right? You're retraining your brain, right? And so again, that takes time, and it takes practice. And so, different ways of doing that. I love email only communication, or through a co-parenting app. I love to paper every conversation so it's really clear. Make sure anything that you're going to send has to deal with like providing information, strip any emotion out of it. It can be really easy and really subtle. You put one little word in there and it's going to activate somebody else. And to your point, staying on top of what's in your control and realizing that sometimes you don't have to tell them what your boundary is. You need to act on it, right?
Yes, yes. Actually, I would advise against announcing that you're setting a boundary, because that will really just trigger them to try to mess with you even more. You could just kind of do it with yourself and and then play it out. Yeah.
And that boundary can be as simple as you just don't respond. Right?
Yes, absolutely. No response is a response sometimes. Sometimes it's the best one.
And it's the most powerful one, especially if you are now retraining your brain and setting these new rules for how you're going to be communicating and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable behavior moving forward. And, as I said before, whether it's, think of it as going to the gym, or think of it, no harm, no foul, no insult intended, but it's kind of like dog training. It's like, it's and I say that with all respect, but
we use that as an analogy. It's like training your puppy not to pee on the carpet. Like it takes consistency, right? You have to do it over and over again until they learn that that's not the way to do it. And so again, a high conflict people, they're always going to test your limits. They're always going to push your buttons. They will always take a mile when you try to give an inch. And so it's you literally training them what you will and will not tolerate, or what you will and will not respond to or engage with. And the more you do that and you're consistent without bending, because that's kind of what happens, right? We get afraid of what that pushback is, or we feel like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble because I'm going to look like I'm not being cooperative. And then the judge is going to think that I'm just, being a bad co-parent. And we have all these fears. But at the end of the day, again, if you're just focusing on what's best for your kids and you're only engaging when it's absolutely necessary, nobody's going to look at that like you're not being cooperative. They'll see the pattern. I mean, they see all those messages coming through, and those emails and things like that. Documentation is also, while I'm on that, I mean, that's a great point too. Make sure that regardless of where you are in your divorce journey, even if the papers are signed and you're divorced and you have a parenting plan, if they are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, if they're not following the court-ordered agreement, if they're in contempt, just make sure you're documenting everything so that if you do ever need to go back to court, you've got receipts. I mean, because that's what, it's not going to be just a he said, she said kind of situation. The judge wants evidence. And so make sure you're building that also for yourself kind of in the background. You don't need to let them know that you're doing it, your ex. Just kind of do it quietly, keep a nice little spreadsheet or something in your laptop. And that will also help you, again, focus on what you can control.
Yeah, and I love that you have addressed kind of the external process, right? Giving yourself those tools, maybe even writing down a few phrases that you can say that you practice so that in the moment it doesn't feel so fired up. So you stay on.
Yeah.
I love doing that with clients. I love practicing things that we're going to say in advance so it gets more comfortable and it actually feels conversational as opposed, and you get to focus on that. It feels like second nature as opposed to getting fired
Yes.
up about things. But
Yeah, practicing scripts is a really great tool. And
I will,
also, don't sleep on ChatGPT. I mean, if
no.
you're somebody, if you're engaging in co-parenting apps or text message or email, ChatGPT is a great tool to help you set and enforce boundaries or to help you communicate more clearly and concisely and not in a way that's accusatory or where it's
Yeah.
too emotional. And, it will hold up in court and you will look respectful if you do struggle with finding out really how to like word things that you want to communicate.
I think that's an excellent tool as well. And to your point, if you're going to utilize AI in that way, make sure you have to be really specific with your prompts. So if you're drafting
Yes.
something and then you're putting it in and saying, hey, I'm dealing with a high conflict co-parent situation. Here's the situation. Here's the response that I want. Please proofread it and give me an unbiased assessment and strip any emotion out of it. So I'm not sure.
Yes.
Like, you really need to kind of dig down in there, because otherwise I've found on those AI platforms, they want to give you a positive bias, right? They want to
Yes.
steer you on.
Right. You do have to be clear. And if you are somebody who, is newer to ChatGPT or you're not really familiar with how to use it for specifically high conflict co-parenting, I do have a digital guide that you can grab. It's got templates and prompts and a library basically of like how to use it specifically for high conflict co-parenting communication. So that will help you if you're not sure how to prompt it correctly.
That fantastic. I love that you have that resource. And so now that we've given everybody kind of these external, these like tangible actions they can take, let's talk about the other hurdle that is super real, that mom guilt, right? So sometimes so many moms have to put up, or they feel like they have to put up with the toxic behavior for the kids, what have you. But how do you deal with that voice in your head that like might push back and say you're being so selfish, or why aren't you protecting yourself, and this has nothing to do with the kids, and that voice.
Yeah, right. People who are like, you should just take the high road. You should just do what's best for the kids. Yeah, in an ideal world, that would be a great route to take. But at the end of the day, you've got to have radical acceptance with who you're dealing with. If you are stuck co-parenting with somebody who's truly high conflict or narcissistic, they're never going to put the kids first. They're never going to want to be on the same page. In every narrative, you are always the problem and they are always the victim. That's never going to stop. So you've got to accept that those are the cards that you've been dealt, and then move forward more strategically. The whole reason that you need to be act more cold in like a business transaction, and to set and enforce those boundaries, and to really stick to that parenting plan or custody agreement, and to not bend and stuff, is to create less chaos for you and your kids. So what you're really doing is you're empowering yourself and you're empowering them by not engaging so much with the chaos and not bending, because they're watching. I mean, they're watching you either tolerate or not tolerate disrespect. They're learning how to set and enforce boundaries from how you are either setting and enforcing them or not setting and enforcing them. They're watching how you process difficult feelings and handle adversity. Like, what are you doing? What are your coping mechanisms? Are you just, drinking too much, or shopping too much, or just doom scrolling online all the time? Is that how you're coping with the chaos? Or are you getting outside and like going for a walk, or maybe doing some meditation, or are you working with a therapist? Are you journaling? Are you going to the gym? Are you like, how are you handling these things? That is going to teach them how to not only handle what's going on, but those are life skills. I mean, if you're dealing with somebody who's toxic, if your ex is toxic, that is not the last toxic person your kids are going to encounter in their lifetime. I mean, they're going to have toxic people at school, schoolmates, teachers, boyfriends and girlfriends, bosses at work, right?
Yeah.
So show them, give them the tools to navigate that type of dynamic in a relationship.
I love that you're bringing that up because it does speak to the larger picture, right? And when you're going through a divorce or you're freshly on the other side, it feels like your entire world is all about divorce and that anything
Yes.
to do with, co-parenting or finances, like everything is on a 10 at all times. And
Yeah.
putting things in perspective in the way that, we're talking about here is so important. Reframing things like, oh, wait, this is just one thing I'm dealing with. This isn't everything, because that starts to diffuse the kind of energy that you're giving it. And also, what we spoke about before, which is like not everything deserves an immediate reaction. Sit with things. That starts to take back your power in the
Yeah.
dynamic, number one, but also it then weeds out what's really important and what's not. When you give things time, you give yourself like a huge advantage of not falling into some old patterns.
Yeah.
And to the parenting, the larger point that we're discussing here, you've nailed it, which is everything you're doing in your life is modeling behavior for your kids. Like I love to say that for me, parenting is like being a human Sherpa. And what I mean by that is you're showing these little beings like how to navigate hard times, right? And when we
Yes.
show them that we can, we bend and we change course, but we still treat people in a certain way, we treat ourselves in a certain way, we're giving them tools that they're then packing away that, as you said, they're going to be using throughout their lifetime. And it's also about emotional regulation, right? So sometimes
Yes.
really easy to get tripped up and let those big feelings guide us instead
Hmm.
of giving ourselves time, giving ourselves tools, and then also giving ourselves radical acceptance. And to your point, you have to accept who that other person is that you're dealing with. Do not expect them to change overnight, or at all.
Yeah.
That's one of the most maddening parts of this process. I
Yes.
say it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to like die. It's like
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not going to happen. You've just
Yeah,
infected yourself.
it's hard, right? It's like that's a hard pill to swallow. And even that, just the process of accepting who you're dealing with is a journey. I mean, you might feel grief, you might grieve, you might feel guilt that you even fell in love with this kind of person or married this person or had kids with this person and now your kids are stuck with this person as a dad. And there's kind of a lot that comes up through that process, but it will help you so much in the long run because hope dies last. We always hold on to that hope of like maybe they'll change and maybe they'll realize that their kids are important and maybe they'll try to co-parent with me and maybe they'll stop being mad at me and maybe like you could do that forever. So I mean at some point you've got to really just look at the facts and the patterns and go, okay, like this is what I'm dealing with. I need to act accordingly. I need to stop with like the potential or romanticizing what kind of co-parenting dynamic we could have if only they were different, if only they would be nicer to me, if only they would show up for the kids when the kids need them.
Yeah, and that is definitely real. And what I will say is that is a part of your work. Like being able to do some deep introspection, really sit with, recognizing, especially with what you brought up, I think that's really real. How could I have picked this partner? How did I have kids with this partner? Well, here's what I'll tell you. It's the same thing I talk to clients about. We do the best we can with the information we have at the time, and
Yeah.
that version of you made that choice for a reason. And being able to take the time to do the work to kind of unpack, because I think there's this idea of like, oh, we're divorced now, I'm ready, I just want to move on. Or even if you're not in a high conflict situation, if you're in an amicable divorce situation, I think people are really caught off guard with the amount of work that they really could be doing on themselves that will help close out that chapter more. But it's the
Hmm.
personal growth. It's a lot about personal growth because you're getting to know who you are now, as opposed to who you were then. But then maybe looking at some patterns, so that you
Yeah.
can move forward and evolve in a different way, which helps you make peace with that other person. And it really helps you make peace with yourself. I think, again, going back to this whole mom guilt, which can be really intense, like I'm sorry. There is nobody who can make themselves feel worse than a single mom who's like juggling it all. It's like I don't know why we're not celebrating ourselves more. It's a lot in here.
Yeah.
And to your point of radical acceptance of that other person, you cannot look for that other person to understand where you're coming from, to justify a point you're trying to make, or to see you, right? There's a reason you got to this point. And so being able to let that go and then turning it back on into yourself of like, why am I looking for somebody who is not valuing me? Why am I looking to them to like somehow agree with me or to validate what I'm saying? It's part of
Yes.
the pattern of the work. Oh my God, so much good stuff. And I know we've already like bumped up against our 20 minutes and we've got real work to get to, but I just kind of like, I really want to talk about one thing that is, the worst, I think, the worst scenarios that happen in these toxic dynamics sometimes, which is like, what do you do when your ex tries to weaponize or manipulate the kids, right? You're doing everything right. You're giving the boundaries to, to the partner. You're doing the work. You're making sure that you're doing the self-care, which is so important because if you're not feeling
Hmm.
none of this is going to be, something that you can handle. But if they're using your kids as messengers or trying to, paint negative ideas about you or a situation that you're in or make them feel guilty about spending time with you, like how do you navigate that? Because that, you know, it's a fear a lot of times, I think, which is why, moms can tend to then overcompensate by trying to communicate too much with that soon to be ex to make up for it. But like, how do you navigate that?
I think what's most important, because again, we can't control how they're parenting or how
Yeah.
they're engaging with their kids or what they're saying or what they're doing, right? And they're going to say things that just aren't true and accuse you of things. And that's just the name of the game with somebody who's high conflict. You just have to make sure that you are doing everything you can to nurture and strengthen the bonds you have with your kids. So when they are in your house, do they feel safe? Do they feel like they can come to you and ask you questions? Can they be themselves? Because I guarantee you they don't feel like they can be themselves at the other house. That's not the type of dynamic that somebody who's high conflict has with them. So like their love tank isn't getting filled over there. So when they're home, like, do you know their love language? Are you filling their love tank? Are you creating a space where they feel safe and holding space for them to have honest, open communication with you? Those are the things that you can control. And so when they do come back home, and you are going to have tough conversations like that. Sometimes they're going to just be repeating things that they heard at the other house. Just listen, try it. And this is not easy, but try to not get defensive or take it personally. It's usually not your kids coming to you with their opinions. It's they're repeating what they've heard at the other house. So just remember that it's not coming from your kids, it's coming from your ex. And just listen and try to have like Switzerland face. Don't be like, well, did I, and well, did he tell you that he did that? Like, you don't want to get involved in that game. Like, just kind of neutral face, listen, and then you can ask, you could say, okay, like, how did that make you feel? Right?
Yes.
Or do you need me to explain anything? Do you have any questions for me? Or you can even say something just like, well, that's not how I remember it. But if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to share my experience, right? Like you can kind of find ways to keep it neutral and still have that safe space, that open communication for your kids without throwing your ex under the bus or going into way too many details that they
Yeah.
just don't need to know. Like, make sure you're keeping it age appropriate and things, things like that. And sometimes it's just as simple as, well, he's entitled to his opinion, just like you're entitled to yours. Some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, and that's okay. And then move on. You don't have to sit there and have a half an hour conversation about it. Just kind of touch on it, validate them, and then move on to something else.
100% agree. And also, keep in mind, they're also, they're clocking you, right?
Yeah.
If you are meeting them with love, if you're not, holding that, if you're not like, immediately feeding into it, but instead holding space, if you're asking them questions about how they're feeling about it, and then sitting with it, it's continuing to provide that safe space because I think the other thing that you really need to also be aware of is you even might see them really acting out on those transition days when they come home to you and think
Yes.
like the age of the kid and think to yourself, what the hell is happening? And then on the heels
Yes.
of that, if you're getting a little of this chatter, all of a sudden, like, the hair on the back of your neck can stand up. When you're getting that like difficult transition behavior, it's because they're settling into a place that feels safe.
Yes. I mean,
Right.
that's such an important thing to remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then not to take it personally. I mean, I do remember very vividly. My kids were younger when I went through my own split and having them come home from transitions. I had to remember on those days they're readjusting and don't take anything personally. And like some crazy behavior would come up and then it would settle down after a while. This has been an amazing conversation as always. So much good stuff was shared. Thank you so much, Leah Marie. I so value all of your insights into this process. And for those of you who might not have been familiar with her, please go check her out at Mindfully Ready here on Instagram. And I'm going to just post this entire conversation. So if you missed any of it, you'll be able to catch up. But thank you so much, dear friend. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me again, Alex. I love getting to chat with you.
Me too. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Be well.